Morning, everybody. Is that working? Okay, great. Some housekeeping first. Mobile phones, please put them on silent or turn them off. No filming. We are videoing everything, so if you need a copy of that, we can sort of organise that later on. If you don't know where the toilets are, they're up in the upper primary level, up there. Emergency exits are here and there and up the back. The teachers are marking. If you need to get any paperwork or pencils or anything for your student that you are marking today, just see Margaret. She's got all of that up the back there somewhere. And the outline for today is we're going to have 3 sessions. We're going to have 3 students each. So before morning tea, there's going to be 3, and then in between morning tea and lunchtime, we have another 3, and then afternoon, we have the last 3. We're going to try and keep the schedule, not that we're on schedule yet, but we're going to try to keep to that. So if there are questions, maybe ask the students at the break times. Might be easier that way, because sometimes that can take up a bit of time. So, okay, to begin with, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So welcome to the Major Works. Today we celebrate a significant part of the Laurean Novalis High School experience, the Major Work. These presentations have been at the heart of our high school since the first class 12 graduated, offering students a unique opportunity to engage in independent and self-directed learning. The Major Work is truly a highlight of the 12-year journey, preparing the students to step into the world with confidence and independence. It's more than a project, it's a rite of passage that encapsulates their growth at Laurean. In many ways, it's a symbolic part of sending them forth into the world equipped with the skills, knowledge and self-reliance that they will need to navigate the future. For the students, it's been a challenge and an opportunity. They chose a topic that captured their interest, something they could explore deeply for a year. This wasn't just any topic, it had to meet the school's criteria while aligning with their passions and curiosities. They then embarked on a journey of research, development and creation, transforming their ideas into a tangible form, whether a product, performance or other form of expression. Today, they share the results of their work with us. The Major Work is an immense undertaking requiring dedication, discipline and perseverance. It is a profound growth opportunity, teaching them to manage a long-term project, overcome obstacles and present their work with confidence. These skills, setting goals, conducting independent research and communicating effectively are invaluable, both academically and beyond school. As you will see, the range of projects today is diverse as the students themselves. Some will present process diaries or theses, documenting their journey, insights and challenges. Others will dive deeply into their chosen subjects, showcasing their curiosity and commitment. Today is a celebration of the creativity, passion and perseverance that each of them has invested into their work. It's a testament to their ability to set goals and overcome challenges and to see their visions come to life. They are eager to share their achievements and show how their hard work has shaped their projects. To me, as the class guardian, it has been an incredible privilege to accompany these students on their Major Work journey. It's amazing to see how each of their pathways evolve and change and how they come together to support themselves, each other, as each takes on their own challenges. It has been a joy to support them along the way and to offer encouragement. Although challenging, there are many triumphs. The moments of elation I feel as I see them push through their difficulties are unmatched. witnessing their growth in knowledge, resilience, and self-belief is a true reward. Some of them are very resistant. When they stand before us today, having overcome the obstacles, we see how far they have come. I want to thank everybody who has supported the class throughout their journey. Your support, guidance, and gentle persuasions have enabled them to be here today and to stand in front of you and the school community for their presentations. I know many of you have experienced this roller coaster ride alongside them and share in the pride of reaching this moment. And I imagine that you are as relieved as they are that today has finally come. Thank you all for joining us in recognising the incredible accomplishments of the class. We look forward to hearing about their personal journeys and seeing the results of their hard work. I present to you the major works of the class of 2024. Ciel has made the brave step of being the first up to present her work. Just the Little Things, a guide for interior design. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ciel Henry, and for my major works, I've created and designed a book that covers the basics of both interior design and feng shui. Now, as many of my teachers and fellow classmates may know, I'm not exactly known for my impeccable time management skills. Seriously, if there was a competition for getting nothing done and still somehow managing to show up at the finish line, I'd have a trophy on my shelf right now. But that's okay. Somehow, despite my questionable work ethic, I've managed to make it here today. And honestly, that's half the battle. So, about my major works. I've always had an appreciation for beautiful interiors. I can't pinpoint exactly when it started, but ever since I was little, I was drawn to grand, well-designed spaces. Looking back, I probably just liked pretty things. I wasn't necessarily thinking about the functionality of a room or the colours of the walls at 5. I used to love going to open homes with my family. Whenever we were moving, I would mentally redecorate the rooms in my head and think about how the spaces could be better. I'd spend hours online looking at real estate listings just to check out the floor plans of the houses. I mean, who does that? Me, apparently. I'd zoom in on all the little pictures of living rooms and bedrooms, scrutinizing how the furniture was laid out and how the lighting made the room feel, and how every little detail contributed to the overall vibe of the space. If you told me back then that this weird obsession with floor plans and interior photos would eventually turn into a full-blown book project, I probably would have laughed, but yet here we are. Looking back, I can safely say I didn't necessarily understand the depth of interior design at the time. I was just in it for the pretty sights. I loved looking at beautiful spaces, but I had no clue what it took to create these spaces or the principles behind design choices. What is interior design? I'm sure most people in this room have been to the doctors at some point. I know it's definitely not everyone's favourite place, but I want you to think back to that waiting room you were in. The one where you sat, trying to relax, but instead you were staring at a plant you knew wasn't real, and an ugly chair that you knew had never been washed. Well, did you know that these spaces are psychologically designed to be calming spaces? Unknowingly, interior design is all around us. Every day, people will wake up, make breakfast, go to work or school in some form of interior design. These spaces can unintentionally improve or impair one's human experience and daily living. Using space and proportion, lighting, colour and texture, the all-around ambience of a room can change, improving productivity, better sleep, and much more. At its core, interior design aims to craft environments that inspire and nurture, enriching our everyday experiences and enhancing our overall well-being. Whether it's a warm and inviting living room, an efficient workspace, or a serene healthcare setting, thoughtful interior design has the power to transform our interactions with the world, making each moment more meaningful and enjoyable. The start. I kicked off my project with all the optimism in the world at the beginning of 2023. Teachers told us it was time to start thinking about our major work ideas. And because I was totally on top of things, I felt I had it all under control. We were given a deadline for our proposals, and I thought, easy, I've got 2 whole years. I'll get to it eventually. It's not like the deadline was right around the corner. I had plenty of time to brainstorm, do some light research, and just generally not worry about it for a while. Then, of course, I started hearing the same advice from every teacher and past student. Get a head start. Trust me, time will fly. Before you know it, you'll be scrambling at the last minute. I obviously didn't listen to their advice, as this wasn't actually the start of my major works. Fast forward a few months, and to my surprise and mild panic, I suddenly realized that the 2 years I thought I had were actually much shorter than I anticipated. The calendar started to look like it was in fast forward. One minute it was the start of 2023, and the next thing I knew it was 2024, and I was staring at a looming deadline with 0 concrete plans. I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do, and let's just say I wasn't exactly ahead. At this point, I was starting to understand what all those teachers and past students had meant. Time really does fly, and it flies faster than you think, especially when you're in denial about it. I could practically hear the clock ticking down, and it wasn't even funny anymore. My 2 years had somehow evaporated, and I was now in full-blown panic mode. The procrastination era. So, after my many different ideas, I finally started my project at the beginning of 2024, diving deep into what I thought was a good idea at the time, feng shui. You know, the ancient Chinese practice of arranging your space to balance your energy and avoid any negative qi. Sounds pretty magical, right? I thought this was going to be my ticket to the design world. I could just picture myself writing a book that would have all the secrets to living your best life through feng shui. Maybe even make it to #1 bestseller. I mean, who want to know how to position their bed in the exact right spot to ensure a lifetime of good fortune and great sleep? I was totally sold on the idea. So I dived right in, reading articles, watching YouTube videos, reading books, and soaking up all this mystical knowledge like a sponge. But after a while, I realized something. Feng shui is massive. Like, I thought I could just breeze through it in a couple of weeks, but no. It's one of those topics that if you try to research in depth, you end up with enough material to fill an encyclopedia, and you're still only reaching the surface. It's a kind of subject where you think, I'll just learn a little, and then 72 hours later, you're knee-deep in ancient Chinese philosophy, energy fields, and how to place your coffee mug, how the placement of your coffee mug can impact your success in life. And that's when the real panic set in. I quickly realized I was way in over my head. Not only was I not going to be able to cover all of feng shui in a single year, but I also discovered a shocking truth. I didn't actually like it that much. I thought I did at first, but it turns out writing a whole book on balancing your yin and yang wasn't exactly giving me the creative buzz I was hoping for. So I made the executive decision to give up on feng shui. At first, I didn't know what to do, but I knew I wanted to do something to do with design. So I came up with a plan B. And that's when the genius idea hit me, interior design. Now, at first, this seemed like the perfect fit. I mean, I'd always been obsessed with homes, but here's the catch. I didn't know anything about interior design, like nothing. All I knew was that pretty furniture and cool lights were involved, and that's about it. So, naturally, I started freaking out. I'd already wasted so much time trying to figure out feng shui, and now I was starting from scratch with a subject that was just as broad. Suddenly, the panic set in again. I thought, how am I going to pull this off? This is going to take forever. I can barely arrange my room in a way that looks good. How am I supposed to write a whole book on this? And in the midst of my external crisis, I did what any reasonable person would do. I talked to Jim. I asked if I could switch to something totally unrelated. I wanted to write a cookbook, as I figured I already had the knowledge of cooking. Jim obviously turned my idea down, or I'd be presenting the perfect chocolate cake recipe right now. But looking back, I realized that Jim probably saved me from myself. If I'd let him change my project again, I would have to start from scratch and do myself more harm than good. And let's face it, chocolate cake isn't exactly going to make me the next greatest designer, is it? The moment of realization. So, with this ultimatum in mind, I decided to stick it up and stick with interior design. The problem, though, was that I still wasn't exactly motivated to dive into it. At the start of the year, I was all about going out, having fun, and living my best life. I was definitely not interested in watching seminars about color theory or how to create a harmonious space with your furniture. My social calendar was packed, and let's just say I had other priorities. But eventually, I was sparked with motivation. I was mindlessly scrolling through TikTok one day, and bam, an interior design book popped up in my feed. Suddenly, I had all the motivation in the world. I didn't know what it was about this book, but for some reason, it clicked. It was like the universe, or maybe just TikTok's algorithm, telling me to do my work. Without even thinking, I closed my phone, gave myself a little internal pep talk, and started researching and writing. From that point on, it was like I couldn't stop. My brain was officially consumed by interior design. I was reading articles, watching videos, taking notes. Basically, my entire life revolved around learning how to arrange furniture in a way that didn't look like a toddler had done it. The start. Researching. So, here's where things get interesting. I'm sure you've all heard that you can't start writing until you've done all your research. Well, let me tell you, that's true. But there's also the small issue of me not being able to focus on a research for more than 15 minutes at a time. To get the ball rolling, I started watching YouTube videos, reading articles, and scrolling through design projects. Honestly, I became a professional interior design researcher. My search history probably looked like the ramblings of someone who'd never seen a couch before. I watched so many videos that I started getting ads like 10 best furniture trends and how to maximize your space in 30 seconds, because clearly I had no idea what I was doing. After a solid 70% of my time spent researching, I finally had the knowledge to start writing. And of course, I immediately faced my first hurdle, actually writing. The research was fun, but now I had to figure out how to put all this information in my own words, simply and readable. Writing, the real challenge. Writing about interior design, with all its nuances, history, and trends, was definitely not as easy as I thought it was. I had pages of notes, research, and thoughts, but when I finally sat down to write, nothing. I was staring at a blank page for what felt like an eternity. The words didn't come easy, and I quickly realized that interior design isn't just about picking pretty colors and putting a couch in a corner. It's a science, a balance of functionality, psychology, and aesthetics. I had to make sure everything I wrote had a purpose and flowed logistically. But then, after a lot of coffee and more YouTube videos than I care to admit, I started piecing things together. My brain was basically a whirlwind of color palettes, lighting tips, furniture layouts, and a lot of Pinterest boards. Designing, laying it out. Along with all the other aspects of my major works process, I encountered more struggles than I care to admit, especially when it came to the design and layout of my book. My first big hurdle hit me when I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out which website or app to use to create my book. I mean, I thought it would be the easy part, how hard could laying out a book be? Turns out pretty hard when you're using the wrong tools. I started by downloading an app called Bookwrite, which seemed pretty good on paper. I thought, okay, easy. I'll just plug everything in, drag and drop, maybe throw in some cool fonts and pictures, and I'll be done. It definitely wasn't that simple. I spent hours trying to figure out how to use the app. After a few attempts, I threw my hands up in defeat and gave up on Bookwrite. And then, to add to my list of challenges, I realized that the pictures I was trying to use were really low resolution. At that point, I had to go on a quest to find the right apps to fix the resolution of my photos. And let me tell you, this was not a simple task. I downloaded app after app trying to find the one that would actually do what I needed it to, but none of them really worked the way I wanted. Not only did I waste a ton of time, but I also managed to rack up a hefty bill along the way. In the end, I spent $25 on apps that I didn't even use. At this point, I was starting to feel like the universe was conspiring against me. I was frustrated, and the realization hit me nothing was going my way. Every path I tried only led me to more dead ends, so after some more internal pep talks, I made the decision to pivot. I figured I could give Canva a go. This was honestly the turning point. Canva turned out to be a godsend. The design process was smooth, the layout tools were easy to use, and best of all, I could see exactly how everything would look as I went along. It was like I had discovered a shortcut out of my frustration maze. And for once, things were actually clicking. Honestly, it felt like I was breezing through the design part of my major works. It was the easiest part of the entire project from here on. But, of course, my journey wasn't over yet. Once my book was finally laid out and looking something like I originally had in my head, the next task was finding a website to print it. I turned to Mixbook, which seemed like the best option on paper. The site was easy to navigate and had all the features I needed. It was everything I thought I wanted, until I ran into another roadblock. For some mysterious reason, I couldn't upload my photo to the website, like at all. I tried every possible method, dragging and dropping, uploading through different browsers, praying to the tech gods, even trying to channel my inner computer whiz. Nothing worked. So, of course, I did what any logistical person would do. I contacted customer support. I thought, okay, they'll help me fix this in no time. Well, the AI chatbot responded and basically told me they'd get back to me in a few days. A few days, I had no few days left. The clock was ticking and I needed this printed like yesterday. So, with time running out, I had to resort to the classic do everything through your phone strategy. And of course, doing everything on your phone brought its own set of complications. The app kept freezing, images wouldn't load, and I kept thinking I was one accidental tap away from sending my whole project into the digital abyss. Once I had finally thought I had finished the designing of my book, I pivoted again. I realized I didn't actually like my book. I focused so much on the layout of my book that I forgot to put any of my own creative touches on it. I ended up changing everything. I kept the writing, but changed all the pictures, designs, and added more of my own touches onto what I had. But somehow, I managed to make it work. It wasn't pretty, but I got my book designed, uploaded, and finally printed. And you know what? Even though the process felt like one huge technical fail after another, when I finally held that printed book in my hands, it was all worth it. It was the kind of moment where you look at your work and think, yeah, this may not have been easy, but I did it. I really did it. So, despite the app that took my money and the tech hiccups that made me question my life choices, I made it to the finish line. Finishing the product, the final stretch. By the time I reached the final stretch of my project, I was so ready to be done. But honestly, there was something really satisfying about seeing it all come together. I had gone from I have no idea what I'm doing to a final product. Sure, it was stressful, but it was also kind of fun. Writing a book about interior design wasn't just about the research or the layout or even the design itself. It was about understanding the impact our environments had on us. Looking back, what I could have done better. So, if I could go back and do things differently, it's definitely a big question that makes me pause and think about the whole journey. One major thing I've learned is that both the wins and the struggles are part of the learning process. Seriously, every little moment, whether good or bad, has helped me grow and get ready for what's next. By looking at what I could have done better, I actually get good insights that help me tackle new projects with more confidence and creativity. Now, looking back, one thing I definitely changed is how I handle time management and procrastination. At first, I really struggled with procrastination and planning, which is a terrible combo, by the way. But eventually, I found my groove. If I just set some solid deadlines and broken things down into smaller tasks from the start, I'm sure I would have saved myself a lot of stress and had a lot smoother ride. But through realizing why I struggle with these issues, I've learned how to manage my time more efficiently and figure out ways to get my motivation started. Another thing I would have changed is getting feedback way earlier. I mean, I did get great feedback from mentors and peers, but if I had checked in with them more regularly through the process, my project could have been even better. It could have given me more chances to tweak things and fix problems before they became a big deal. When it comes to research, I wish I had cast a wider net. I did a lot of digging, but maybe if I had explored more outside sources like a mentor, I could have uncovered more fresh ideas and got a deeper understanding of my topic. It would have made the final product even richer and more well-rounded. And here's the big one. I would have taken more creative risks. I'm proud of the work I did, but sometimes I played it too safe, sticking to the tried and true methods because I was worried about messing up. If I'd tried some weird ideas or different styles, I think the end result would have been even more innovative and unique. At the end of the day, I'm realizing that learning is a never-ending process. Every project is a chance to get better, and I can't wait to take all these lessons with me into whatever I do next, so I can keep improving both professionally and personally. Conclusion, lessons learned. So, here we are. My major works is complete, and I can honestly say that even though I left it to the last minute, I learned a ton. I learned that procrastination is an art, but also a deeply regrettable practice. I learned that interior design is so much more than aesthetics. It's about improving the way we live and work. And I learned that sometimes you need a TikTok video to light the fire under you. But more than anything, I learned that if you really want to do something, whether it's interior design, writing a book, or baking a cake, you just have to start. Even if it's the 11th hour, and even if you have no idea what you're doing. Because once you start, things somehow have a way of falling into place. I have quite a large list of thank yous, but I promise I'm almost done. I would like to specifically thank my mum and my dad for putting up with my outbreaks of frustration, and would also like to thank them for cooling me down after my frustration outbreaks. Also, specifically my sister for giving me the layout of this speech, and for my thesis really was a big help. Jim, my guardian, also deserves a big thank you, not only for making my journey that much easier, but for also putting up with my late hand-ins and missed days. I really couldn't have done it without him. A huge thanks to my classmates, not for anything specific, but just for being there when I needed a distraction or a few laughs, even when they had their own projects to work on. For me, a massive part of my major works relied on my friends, and I'm so grateful for that. And finally, a thanks to everyone else, teachers, students, and past students, and anyone else that I forgot to thank. Thank you too. Thanks everyone for listening to my major works journey and my procrastination trek.
Thank you, CL. It was great to hear your insights. I'm sure your creativity will get you through your whole life. Keep it up, it's great. Next up is Daniel. He's always full of great ideas. His presentation is called Turning Cars into Homes, a creative solution to the housing crisis. Thank you, Daniel.
So, what's up, Lorian? I'll just take a moment to talk about how I got to my idea. I think I'll get right into it, really. So, originally, I was dumbfounded on what I should do. I knew that I'd like to focus on something to do with, well, really, anything that moves, because I'd been fascinated with those great machines I learned about so very long ago. But however, quickly I realized that the most sensible of these machines to design would be a car, because some people actually own one of those. And I came up with some kind of harebrained scheme to make an emergency life raft that I would airdrop on people that couldn't reach other ways of help, and it would be fitted with some immense life support system and and some water filtration and flotation devices. Now, this was not quite a good idea for a major work, so I decided I'd sit on this idea for a while and try and come up with a better one. Then, later, on a family vacation to northern New South Wales, I saw something that stuck with me. Workers who couldn't even afford to live in the towns they called home. Every night there was this mass exodus of cars as people left to find somewhere cheaper to live. And often in the countryside or free parking spots. There weren't people living lavishly. There were people living in barely acceptable conditions because the towns had been taken over by wealthy newcomers from the cities. They had sold their homes, brought their huge life savings, and moved in for that idyllic beachside retirement they'd always dreamed of. Sounds nice, right? Except their rival drove property prices through the roof. What came next was the landlords of Australia swooping in, buying up what was left, and turning their homes into overpriced rentals aimed at the tourists or B&Bs, basically a renter's worst nightmare. And who was left to deal with the fallout? The local workers. For people on single incomes, it wasn't just rent that they couldn't afford. Soon they couldn't even afford food. And eventually their cars became their last option for shelter. First it was tradies and shop owners, then it was families and even teachers. Before long, I heard about shop owners who had been priced out too. I was stunned. These were people who'd grown up in these small towns, who'd made their communities what they were, and now they were being pushed out like they didn't matter. It broke my heart, and I knew I had to do something, anything to try and help, even if it was just in some small way. So what is my major works? Oh yes. So these are the house prices in the areas I was in, and as you can see, that's a 50% growth in 1 year. So that was pretty drastic. But what is my major works? Essentially, the goal of my major work is to create an affordable, quick service for the individuals who are unable or unwilling to pay for the rent in their area, by focusing on the transformation of the interior of their car to a suitable living situation, while still keeping the vehicle in a reversible state so it can be returned back to a regular vehicle. This focus on people who can afford to pay a couple of months' rent for the option to own the functional equivalent of their own home. By extension, the design will also be perfect for disaster victims who have lost their homes and need somewhere to get back on their feet, or preparations in at-risk areas, or fire zones. These improvements would also be ideal for road trips, and the upgraded models would be a great choice for traveling in third world countries. Now, I'd like to talk about some homeless statistics. I'll read this for the people up the back. The Australian Bureau of Statistics defines homelessness as in a dwelling that is inadequate or has no tenure, or if the initial tenure is too short and not extendable, or does not allow them to have control of and access to space for social relations. There are over 122,000 people experiencing homelessness on any given night. Only 6% of these people are homeless and sleep on the streets. Now, this means that the rest of them are all sleeping in motels or hotels or even on their friends' beds. In Australia, 1 in 7 people experiencing homelessness are over 55 years, which means the majority of the population are actually quite young. And over 17,600 children younger than 12 years are homeless. The 4 biggest causes for homelessness are domestic and family violence, sudden life changes that trigger homelessness, lack of affordable and social housing, and mental health challenges. Now, out of all of these, outside influence can only really effectively rectify one of them, being lack of affordable and social housing. Once I had my idea, I started the search for a suitable... Oh, wait. This is also the homeless statistics since the last census. We're doing kind of well, but everywhere else is quite a high incline, especially Tasmania. So I thought this would be a massive problem, and I thought that I should be trying to help to fix it. Now, once I had my idea, I started the search for a suitable vehicle to transform. It was important to me that I had a vehicle that would properly show my work, something like a van or SUV, that would be large enough for me to be able to show my creativity and work. But I was against a van because I felt that it would simply be too easy to work with and not provide a big enough challenge. Out of no challenge, my creativity would suffer. So I had to find some sort of SUV. I was looking for one with plenty of space, no underfloor spare wheel, and a completely open boot, which were uncommon in the price range I was looking at. When I say open boot, most of them around that time had like a arching inwards around here because the brake light took up a lot of space. I was looking for something that was completely open because having that really kind of crams the space in, and I felt that it was important to go without one of those. Eventually, I settled on finding a Toyota Prado because it nicely suited all my needs. And mainly, I quite liked the look of them. So, now the search had begun, and I'd already somehow managed to breeze my way through the holidays and a few weeks into term 1. So I began with increasing worry, searching any and all websites, trying to find any reasonably priced Prados in my area, or even at auction, but with no avail. I even put up flyers around the school, but unfortunately, it seems that no one has one to spare. I was very confident, and still am, that I could find one for the around the 3K price range. But as soon as I'd find the perfect one, I'd rush home to console my parents and message the owner if I could come and take a look. I'd receive the prompt message that they had sold the car early in the day, which was quite strange when you think about how they had been on sale for half a year. This all led to, after months of searching, a desperate act in the term 1 holidays, where I raised the search price to the full 5K budget and bought practically the first one that replied to me. Luckily, potentially of the increased budget, the Prado that I bought was in surprisingly good condition, so I could remove a large section of time in my schedule marked as maintenance, leaving me almost on schedule, basically. This is my car. So finally, in the start of term 2, I was able to remove the second and third row seats, these ones too, and clean the interior, finding many relics of the family that owned it previously. This allowed me to finally get a look at the area that I was working with and start making designs for the interior structure, which I'd been unable to start because I have no idea where to find detailed schematics of the interiors of cars online. Most of my designs, before I'd been able to see the actual dimensions of the vehicle, had been pretty far-fetched and unrealistic. I even included a design that had a wraparound bench that went over the top, but as I experienced a few nights back, this is barely enough to fit me. This called for a complete redesign of the interior to find a more suitable use of the space, and especially the use of the factory mounting points. And it was vital that I was able to use those because I didn't want to actually damage the car. So I had to find a way to attach everything to the holes that were already in the car. And because it needed to be strong enough to support the heavy additions that I was making. The final idea was selected as it was the last of multiple improvements on the original design, each adding a crucial element. The first improvement was to raise the bed so I could fit the fridge under it. Basically, in my first design, I had the fridge on the bench, and it would be some kind of strange thing where you'd push on it and the whole thing would slide up. It seems a little hard to do now. So, and this also meant that the desk was very wide, and it was taking up a lot of space. So moving it under the bed was really the only option. This also created a footwell between the bed and the desk, so that you could sit comfortably while using it and not have to sit cross-legged on the bed. The desk was also moved to the left side because I had a concern that if there was a severe accident while operating the vehicle and the wooden shelving broke free of its secure attachments, which it's secure, and it was propelled forwards, there's a 100% chance of there being someone in the driver's seat, and there might not be someone in the passenger seat. So don't crash with a friend. The second improvement was a redesign of the desk space, placing more storage in the absence of the fridge, and making a grid structure. And I'd have little fabric boxes that you'd put in there. But I've realized that some people actually own stuff that are a little bit longer than a small box. So I had to remove the middle panel here, which did actually save on a lot of wood use. The fourth design improvement was ergonomics of the design, and added a higher desk allowing for easier use of the desk area. And the rear panels are also swapped for single column supports, giving easier access to the storage area from the rear of the vehicle without necessarily entering the car, which once again reduced the material required. The fourth design focused on the aesthetics and usability design, restyling the upper shelf for more desk space without removing significant shelf space, and then shortening the design, allowing for better adjustment of the passenger seat. The final design swapped the location of the top shelf from the rear of the car to just behind the passenger seat, this shelf here, which meant that I could move the sink area towards the back of the car, which meant that if you had some kind of sink to wash, you wouldn't have to shimmy your way along the entire vehicle to be able to get to the sink. So, then construction began. My basic construction process began with me finding the right plank of wood, realizing that it was fairly warped, cutting it in half so that I could plane the two ends easier, joining them back together so I could have a finished piece of wood. Then I would pour resin into all the holes that were in the wood, sand them off, pour resin in again in the holes that weren't filled, then sand all that off, until I had finally been left with a silky smooth finish. And then I added an oil varnish. This is a nice video demonstrating exactly how long it takes to add an oil varnish to a piece of wood. Now this has been sped up, I think 20 times. And I'd add a clear oil varnish that would be water resistant and UV resistant, which was quite important as the majority of the design of the car was fairly open, so that a lot of sunlight would quite often be shining in on the wood inside. However, at the end of term 2, I was rapidly falling behind schedule, and one of my resin pours had been having trouble setting over the last 2 weeks. Ooh. This is what one of the final products look like, which has been nicely varnished and everything. So I left this resin in a warm room, hoping that it would set, and then over the holidays I'd come back to work on it. However, after waiting another week into the holidays, it displayed no signs of setting beyond a semi-solid mass. No problem though, I thought. I'll just remove it and re-pour a new batch. However, the resin had other plans and subjected me to a further 4 weeks of pain and torture before I could finally remove it. Imagine this is the wood. I poured the resin on. I then sanded it down, which had actually removed some of the wood. Then I got tweezers out, plucked it all down, but I knew there was some kind of interior structure. But so I suspected that I could just pour more resin in there and it'd be fine. I wouldn't have to care about it leaking fruit. I was wrong. It still managed to leak everywhere and cause many more days of sanding, and even after setting, the old resin has somehow mixed with the new resin, and it is still somewhat goopy. You can see this in my final design outside. Now, I've prepared a short speech, just kind of thanking the resin. This is the enemy. I want everyone to familiarize yourself with its appearances and symptoms. It has no known weaknesses. It is invulnerable to chiseling, picking, pulling, twisting, fire, turpentine on fire, and verbal insults. Its strengths are smearing, goofiness, nausea when alight, and an eye-for-eye mentality. Also, a general evil disregard for sanity. The only known way of defeating the enemy is to sand it to a pulp and remove the remaining vermin using tweezers with extreme prejudice. However, the enemy will use its goopiness and smearing against you, clogging your sandpaper, and relocating itself in a swirling pattern around your wood, typically causing severe anguish. Oopsies. Tremendous wailing, and a permanent fine mist in the air that will be with you till you die. Now, moving on from this, I went straight to assembling the bed frame, which, unlike the shelving, I decided, because it would be covered 90% of the time, I'd use some structural plywood, because it would be lightweight, strong, and relatively cheap, along with being fast and easy to use, so I could assemble the whole bed frame in under a week. But the main beauty of the structural plywood is that I wouldn't need resin. A massive win. After completing the shelving unit, I finally had time to work out some of the kinks in the final design, including lowering the body of the design and trimming some of the shelves so the upper layers could be actually used, since originally this was like pinched against the ceiling, so I had to completely redesign it. I also created a small indent in the top shelf, which meant they could fit properly in with the car. I'm actually quite proud of that. Then I finished construction, and this is what it looks like. So then, I returned in the next term with the idea of adding electrical components. Eventually adding a heater, a water pumping system, an oven, maybe a microwave, a sink, and a fridge. Now, I realized that some of these would be a bit hard to fit inside my car. So, of course, I'd have to find some smaller designs. But also, over time, I realized that most of these, while taking a long time, would also be kind of not feasible and also not even required, because I'm trying to make like a quite easy design and cheap. So I eventually shortened it down to just a fridge. Because the other ones, really, you can do it other means, like you can get a gas cooker or something. But a fridge, the only other option is an icebox, and I thought that it's quite important to have a fridge. So, also after reconsidering the price range and the need of the consumer, I also agree that a fridge would be required. But in upgraded models, I'd definitely consider adding all of the other components. Now, I've drawn a simplified electric diagram so that everyone can easier understand what I've been doing. So this is what I deemed that I'd need. You've got the car battery here, which everyone has one of those, but this battery is meant for quick use. So basically, it starts the car, drains a ton, and then it fills it up really quickly. Now, this is perfect for your car, but for something like a fridge, it would not be so good. So because I had like a very slow trickle in of power from the solar and a very slow out for the fridge, I need a deep cycle battery. Now basically what happens here is the power comes from your alternator, down, connects in here, into your DC-DC charger, which is basically a control box that makes everything run, comes out here, then goes into your spare battery, charges that up, and then all of this goes and charges your fridge. Now, I've kind of simplified this to a couple of lines, but what's actually going on in here is kind of something like that. Now, once again, when it came to buying the electrical components, I was met with the struggles of spending exorbitant money on items that you really can't learn enough about. But the first item on my checklist was a car battery, or was a deep cycle battery. I'd require some type of lithium or AGM battery. This one's lithium, that one's AGM. It's just different ways of making the battery, really. Now, there's many arguments between the two of them, mainly being my parents telling me that lithium may go boom boom. I didn't really want that in my car, but unfortunately, I've been assured that this is not the type of battery that does that. This type of lithium battery is slower, but much longer lasting and non-explosive. Now, when buying one of these, the cheapest on the market are strange foreign, unnamed ones, that when cut open, typically include some kind of smaller battery and then a lot of heavy metal. I didn't want that to happen to me, so I decided to go for a name brand one. And when looking, the cheapest out there, really, is a King's battery. However, I knew that I also wanted to add solar charging capabilities because otherwise the driver may have to drive 2 or 3 hours per day to recharge the battery. But in research, I realized that it was more to it than just connecting the solar panel wires to the battery. It would require some sort of high-tech connecting device to control and regulate the power supplied. Luckily, they have these at King's. One of these. I'd also need to assemble a control box, that red thing on the previous slide, to properly connect the power storage to the power demand. Now, luckily, they also sell these for a lower price than the sum of all the components at King's. Now, all I needed was the fridge. Luckily, King's also sells one of the cheapest drawer fridges around, and it just so happens is the exact fridge I designed the car for in the first place. So, once I had all the electrical components for my shopping spree, I had to assemble them. But luckily, King's has a 7-minute video tutorial explaining how to do this. And after just a week of cutting and soldering, I was ready to install. However, I knew that I needed to run a cable from the rear of the car to the engine bay. And after some poking around, I found that I could run a cable through the side of the car and into the engine bay through the right fender. After doing that, it was a quick Sunday-long process of installing the rest of the components securely in the car. Whew. Finally, I've finished the product and I'm able to take a step back and look at what I've done. And with the help of a relative shower tent and a quick trip to BCF, I'm able to quickly assemble a shower that you can quickly fold up and take with you wherever you may go. And with all this assembled, I'm able to finally, last Thursday, test the design. Oh, this is what I've paid for the car. So basically, that's me up there. Very expensive, but this is what the customer would actually pay for. And this is the total price for someone if they were to buy one of my designs. This is also what I paid. Now, this is a short video I've prepared explaining the process of sleeping in my car. Ooh,
Hey,
it's
all, we're
working.
back with another living in your car tutorial. This year we've got a simple video demonstrating what it's like to spend a night in your car. Firstly, I start with eating my dinner. Usually I would watch a movie or something, but today for this video I'm just eating to demonstrate the use of the space and the comfortability when eating.
That's also bangers and mash.
Now, once we're done eating, we wash up our plates because we're good hosts. And unfortunately, it's raining on this night, so I use my quick umbrella setup to keep the rain off me, and so my plate can dry. Right after that, it's straight to work, and I'm working on my speech for my major work. That's due tomorrow. Real teeth-clenching stuff. But unfortunately, I'm bothered by the 9:30 delivery guy in the rain, and I have to abandon my work and help with the parcel. But it's quick and easy, and I'm straight back to work. And there I go again, demonstrating how easy it is to work in my car. Getting myself nice and comfortable on the bed for some late night work. And after a minor distraction, I'm back, working until the sun rises. It's some real headbanging stuff, of course, so I'm sent straight to sleep for a quick power nap. And I'm back without any distractions. After that, it's time for a quick distraction with some Minesweeper, of course. I lose immediately, and I'm sent straight to sleep after using my brilliant shower.
Now finally, I come to the conclusion. However, in saying this, there are some things that I would do differently in the design and construction phases. Mainly, the process was very much measure once, cut twice, which substantially increased the time required for every little step of my design. For example, during my resin pouring, where there was many leaks and I was using tape to cover the holes on the underside of the wood, when a leak appeared, my mindset was very much just use more tape, which contributed to the largest waste of time of my project. Basically, the tape would separate from the wood, resin would fill this area, I'd put more tape on, it would separate more and more until you have a nice bowl of resin just set under your wood. The average process of design to construction would include me designing the component, building the component according to my crude drawings, getting extremely worried right near the end that I have no idea what I'm doing, going right back to the drawing board, redoing the design phase, realizing that it was all fine and continuing on with my project. In the end, I think with my current designs, I could do the entire project in a quarter of the time it took the first time around. However, I am proud of myself. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of the things that I did that I'm proud of accomplishing. Firstly, completing my major works is a miracle in itself, and doing any kind of successful electrical work amazes me, along with completing the project with minimal to no help, excluding Kevin's handy tips or Jonas's reassuring electrical help. With most of the time, no one really knowing what I was doing, including myself. And I feel as though my problem-solving skills have improved throughout the course of my project. Like back when I bought some right-angled brackets and realized the hole in them was too small for the bolts I was using, instead of going and buying some more, I got to work drilling some new holes, which took me weeks, but no wasted material. And when I ran out and had to go get some more, they only had double ones. But I thought around this and just cut them in half, at least saving 10 cents per one. I really had the most fun during my project when I was working on the electrics. And I feel that when working with the electrics, it was a big step in my engineering confidence. Whew. If I was to fully complete the project and take it to the standard I envisioned, there would be a few key upgrades that would make it all come together. Firstly, water storage in the rear footwell with a wooden cover across it would amply fill any requirements for living off the grid. Next up, water access. A pump could be installed to provide pressurized water for both the sink and the shower. A shower setup hanging from the back of the car will also be added. So here we've got a metal structure that kind of makes a square shape, and it'll be attached to the rear door in the car. So when you open it, it like, and it comes open. And you could attach some curtains to it so it'd hang down. I'd also have this awning here with some curtains on it, and maybe a little connecting part between them so you could have this nice little area. I'd also have a roof rack, which was quite hard to find, didn't end up getting one, and a solar panel installed on the top of my car. Also, a rainwater collection system could be added for emergencies, providing backup water when purified supplies aren't readily available. A gas cooker with a mounted bottle holder on the rear of the car, sharing the spare wheels mounts, would also be a solid addition. Alternatively, an electric option could be explored for more renewable and long-lasting solution. These enhancements would transform the Prado into not just a livable space, but a fully independent home on wheels. That's all I've got. Thank you, Lauren, for being such an amazing crowd. You guys have been really great. I'll be here all day, so if you guys have any questions about what I specifically know, I'd be happy to answer them. And if you'd like to see the vehicle itself, it's just parked outside. Have a wonderful morning, and I'll see you guys around.
Thank you, Daniel. Jess, I think we might have to book him in for some PTSD sessions. And don't even ask him about the galvanised bolts. Thanks, Daniel. It's great to see the adaptations that you've been doing. So many of you may have already had a preview of our next presenter with a fantastic production of The Hobbit at the end of last term. So I would like to welcome Hannah up here for her presentation. And let me find it. And to tell us more about how she created her musical. So her presentation is called The Middle-earth Project, Creating a Musical. Thank you, Hannah.
You've heard that anxiety makes you lose hair. For me, it's the opposite. This is what major works does to a person. A great writer once said, "While things are uncomfortable, palpitating, and even gruesome, may make a good tale and take a great deal of telling." This is how I feel about my major works. Uncomfortable, palpitating, anxiety-inducing, annoying, gruesome, I'm glad not. But it does make a good story to tell people and a good major works speech. So hi, my name is Hannah Adams, and my major works is the Middle-earth Project, Creating a Musical. For my major works, I wrote and scored a musical adaptation of Tolkien's The Hobbit. Combining my love of musicals and Middle-earth, I dedicated my last year at Lorien to creating this musical for the school's community with my company of primary classes. Starting from the birth of the idea, to reading Tolkien's work and watching the films for inspiration, then writing and designing and the staging and costuming, working with classes 4, 5 and 6 to performing the final product on the 26th and 27th of September. My aims in creating this project were to successfully perform a primary school musical, complete all the props, sets, costumes and lighting in time for the performance, have it go as smoothly as possible, and have some fun in the process. With these in mind, I invite you on my personal journey through the making of this musical to its completion and my thoughts on how it went. Well, you don't really have a choice. You're not getting any Dragon's Gold at the end of this, but you are getting morning tea. Throughout my 9 years at Lorien, I always knew about the overwhelming but far off major works. On open days, I would see them in the library and thought, that's crazy. How the hell can someone think up and make something like that? But I don't have to worry about that. No, that's a future me problem. Well, to my younger self, thanks a lot. This project didn't really start in term 4 of year 11 when we were handing in our proposals. Rather, I already had in mind what I wanted to do, a musical. Coming from a very musically gifted family, I grew up playing mainly piano and singing, and it has now become my professional job, playing gigs. So if anyone has any weddings coming up, please call my line. On the other, yet very, very similar end, I am a proud theatre kid. Once I had the idea of the musical, I then needed to decide what I was going to make it about. I began to think of what stories I could adapt, because it's a lot easier to do in a year. So, my first idea was Lord of the Rings. Because while I'm a musical theatre fan, I am also a massive Tolkien fan. Could I get more nerdy? Yes, because I did know that Viggo Mortensen actually broke his toe kicking that helmet. Now, I know that the series is 3 books long, and Peter Jackson's movies have a total running time of 9 hours and 18 minutes. I was planning on only doing the first part, The Fellowship of the Ring, but Jim said that leaving the story where it ended with the Fellowship splitting and not even getting to the good stuff would feel unfinished. That's my best Jim impression. So I came to the decision of The Hobbit. Now, instead of doing what Peter Jackson did and unnecessarily stretching out the solo novel into 3 films, I had a finished story that I could turn into a musical. When pitching my idea, I first proposed it as a high school musical, but found that it would become less my project and more the whole school's. So I tried it again as a primary school musical, using classes 4, 5, and 6 to act the parts and perform the music. This was hard to get past the proposal stage, as a production like this hadn't been done in the primary before, and children are notoriously hard to work with. But with the support of the primary music teachers, who just so happened to be my mum and dad as well, Barbara and Kevin, we were able to work with the class teachers, Prue, Bess, and Tracy, who all said yes. With their cooperation and a good word from Jim and Marcus, my proposal was all good. From the beginning of the Christmas holidays to the end of term 2, I read, listened, ate, and breathed The Hobbit. I even went to Hobbiton, the original filming location of the Shire in New Zealand, on a family visit. It definitely gave me a lot of inspiration, walking past the Hobbit holes and even walking through a fully decorated house and telling our tour guide that I was writing a musical, to which he answered, "Oh, can I play Gandalf?" When I got into the rhythm of listening to the audiobook and writing, I had to figure out what chapters would make up the scenes, how they would work in the confines of the stage, and which ones I had to sacrifice for timing or practicality. This is real life. I cannot have a man/bear shapeshifter on stage. I started writing the script, following along the scene from the book as accurately as I could. In some instances, creative freedom had to be taken, as Tolkien's words became too difficult to understand. So in those cases, I simplified the wording to more modern English or took out the parts altogether. Although I wanted to keep to the original story, I did let go of some parts or shorten scenes like the Battle of the 5 Armies or Bilbo's lookout at the forest, whilst keeping the story coherent and interesting by using the engaging scenes that would be fun to perform and watch, like the spiders or the trolls. I had to understand both my actors and my audience. As I said before, I had to write it to fit younger people, as it is easier to understand and get into character, but also for the audience to follow the story in a different medium than a book or a film. The script went through many variations as it came to completion and refined to its simplest form, especially my cast started reading the script and I heard it said back to me. My English teacher Angela proofread the script and gave me notes like the directions to be shorter, so I took them and added them, including the addition of the narrator at the beginning of some scenes. During this time, I was also writing the songs. I wanted to have a song in each scene, which was easy as Tolkien had thankfully written songs into the book. I worked with my parents, making the melodies to the words, writing the music and recording demos. We used Tolkien's words in the songs like The Dwarves' Lament, The Goblin's Chant, and the Elven song. The only song we wrote by ourselves was the Trolls song. Which was very funny in the performance as we had tiny children in potato sacks singing their hearts out. The iconic score from the movies was also added as the instrumental concerning hobbits. And the Ring theme. Ooh. Which was a last-minute addition from my dad in the Gollum scene, as it's where we first see the one ring to rule them all. And it plays as a homage to its importance in The Lord of the Rings. And there are two songs that neither we or Tolkien wrote, them being Ed Sheeran's Icy Fire and the Spider-Man theme, scary version. And jazzy version. Cool, thank you. Go to my musicians. One of my main focuses was who was going to say these lines in the final performance. My first idea was to have a mix of the three classes, like in the high school musicals. However, finding time and my filled schedules would be a logistical nightmare. So my mum Tracy and I came up with the idea of having one class do 2 scenes each. After a lot of variations in the order, the final rotation became Year 6 doing the first scene in Bilbo's house, then Year 4 doing the Trolls scene, and Year 5 doing the Goblin Cave and Gollum scene, and then repeating in the second half. The only time they would overlap was when the different classes were helping with music, or in the changing rooms from scene to scene, which I will go into further detail on later. By incorporating my HSC major design project, I decided to focus this on the physical stage designs of the play, including the props, sets, costumes, lighting, and sound. I made a list of props, many of which I was able to find at school, like the swords, crockery, tables and chairs, and beanbags. Some other story-essential props I had to make, like the campfire made from cellophane and a solar light, and the trees in the forest from plywood. Thank you, Jim. My main prop was the dragon puppet Smaug, which I spent the most time making and was a big wow factor to bring the project to a higher quality. Smaug's humble beginnings started as a bunch of polystyrene fruit boxes from our local fruit shop that after a lot of chiseling, painting, and a lot of snowing in the backyard, microplastics, it became the head. It did snow every day. And my mum's garden will never be the same. I'm very sorry. I originally had the body be made out of a dowling spine with cane ribs. However, that was very easily breakable. So it was changed to a movable, much thicker wooden spine. And it's filled with beans. Now, with the dowling that I didn't use, I used it for the wings. And I did not learn from my lesson because this is also very breakable at the worst possible times. The right wing breaking off right when the D&T examiners came in to mark the project, and the left wing during the first performance. The skin and the scales were made from old fabric. This is an old blanket, and these is just extra fabric I had from making the wings. I'm very proud of my little dragon. So thank you. And I've learnt so many skills from this through the practical work and the teachings from Jim. Thank you, Jim, again. Another prop that became a much bigger effort than I expected was the barrels in Scene 5. They had to be light and easy to move around in for a Year 4, but also wide enough for them to hide inside. With the cane I didn't end up using for the dragon, I recycled it to be the rings of the barrel, with the wooden panels being replaced by cardboard. Definitely not waterproof, but this is fantasy, people. The problem was attaching the cardboard onto the cane securely when my idea of hot gluing the cardboard panels didn't stick. With the help, that was a really unintentional pun, I just realized. With the help of my mum, we came up with the idea of threading the cane into the holes in the cardboard so it's stable and strong. This took a long time to get all 7 barrels done and used a lot of support. But after all the cutting of the panels from the roll of cardboard, threading all the cane, cable tying and gluing both ends, and my fingers in the process, and many broken cardboard and fixed barrels, all were completed just in time for the performance. The costume department, although dusty and detrimental to my nose, fit the aesthetic of Middle-earth. During the Christmas holidays, my nana and I began scoping out what could be used to create the characters. Bilbo's was quite simple and was the first costume I organised. All the parts were found in the costume room except for the hobbit feet that were made by my mum and the ring which was kindly made by my classmate Kevin. The dwarf's costume all had to be unique, so they took the longest to prepare. The fur coats were from school or op shops, and the beards, which I was wearing, were made by my mum and I from wool on a strip of Velcro. The spider costumes were made by Michaela, using long black sleeve shirts from Salvo's and pool noodles for the legs. She cut the noodles in half, then thread them into black stockings to make them match, and glued them onto the back of the shirt, covering up the seams with a black ribbon. The glasses were an extra idea to give them a more bug-eyed look. I am very thankful for Michaela for making these. Gandalf's cloak was generously made by my grandmother. I'm seeing a pattern that I do not make any of the costumes myself. We bought a cloak sewing pattern and grey fabric from Spotlight. We tried to match the colour to the fabric of the hat we already found at school. We measured the cloak parts to a bit smaller than me to fit my young Gandalfs. My nana showed me how to follow a cutting pattern and sewing instructions, as well as a method to make the design stronger and cleaner by different types of stitches. I wish I could do my own sewing. However, relearning a skill would take much needed time to make other props. We finished the design by adding fabric straps to tie the cloak closed and a collar from a different pattern. In conclusion, Spotlight and my nana are my best friends. For the set design, the Hobbit door wasn't made until quite late, due to the time it took making the dragon. I thought the door would be too ambitious. However, I thankfully had a lot of help from Jim, who built the whole door and frame, and my classmates and my dad as well, who painted and set it up. The map also wasn't finished until very late, like the day of. I wanted to create a backdrop and thought Thorin's map would fit, as in the first scene on the table they talk about in the meeting, and by showing it, it invites and immerses the audience further into the story. Since finding fabric to make it would be expensive, I used an old sheet and painted the design when I wasn't busy, but when I was, I had the helping artistic hand of Sabrina, who finished the amazing painting. Now, I am no lighting expert and don't know how to operate the booth. However, in my designs of the stage, the lighting is a very important part of telling the story. I had in mind and wrote out the colours and scenes in my portfolio and in the script, yet couldn't program them myself. I was going to ask Marcus, however, he was going to be away on both performances. But during the practices for the Blues Brothers, Oscar, an alumni at the school and a lighting technician, offered to do the lighting programming and the lights on the opening night. This meant an additional cost that put us over our original budget, and he wasn't available for the school performance. But these problems were overcome as we found a way to get the money back through the tickets and had Jackson, a student here, to take over for the second performance. Thank you, Oscar and Jackson. Though I don't know how to do the lighting, I do know how to download an MP3. My task of going onto YouTube and finding the sound effects, like the clock chimes and the dragon roar, were a lovely way to spend an evening. I saved all of them in my computer, put them in the booth on the night to be someone else's more tech-savvy problem. Most of the challenges that came from designing the play were from time restraints and my sometimes over-ambitious ideas. In The Hobbit, Thorin's map has rune letters that are invisible and appear in the moonlight. I wanted to create this effect by using UV paint, which just ended up being very white paint. I thought that the white would show up in the blue light, however, it showed up in the normal light as well. We overcame this problem by changing the lighting so it shone on the runes to draw the audience's attention. Not the effect I was hoping for, but I had to show off mine and Sabrina's hard work one way or another. Scheduling the lesson times was always going to be a problem, as mixing my major works and my HSC maths does not end up well. As it turns out, my maths lesson always overlapped with one of the classes, so as a compromise, I would spend an hour doing maths and then the last 30 minutes helping my mum in their lessons. As the rehearsals became more dire, I had to take the whole maths lesson off, which led to more time practicing, but less time cramming last-minute exam studies. I'm sorry, Jeffrey. The first time I worked with the classes was with Class 6 in their music lesson with my parents. I was obviously nervous of what they would think of a Class 12 coming into their lesson, telling them to learn I See Fire by Ed Sheeran, and oh yeah, later acting an entire musical. But on the first day, it turns out some of them didn't even know I was in Year 12 or that I even went to this school. It went well despite a lot of them not being familiar with the song or the story, but it was a great start to my campaign. The Term 2 practices were focused on introducing the story through the songs and trying to explain what the major works was and why I would be stuck with them. I was very thankful they took the challenge with open minds, mainly because they loved the idea of acting out goblins or dwarves or pretending to be rolling down the rapids in barrels. Starting from the songs and working up was a good way to engage the kids by either having them bang the pots and pans in the Trolls song or learning the dance I choreographed in the Goblin song. We wanted the classes to play their own music in the scenes, which led to some humorous situations, such as Bilbo playing the double bass. Once all the classes finally knew what the musical entailed, I chased down Angela for the final script so I could start the acting. I'm not going to lie, it was quite a shock when this project went from my time alone writing the script in the holidays to the busy music lessons, and it became a project much bigger than me. Like Bilbo's help in the Dwarves' adventure, I felt like I was doing this musical for them, and even with the looming deadline and the anxiety of the mountainous performance, I had so much support and knew I couldn't let my dwarves down on their journey. With 9 weeks to practice the script and full run-throughs, everything was ramping up in excitement, energy, and emotion. Going through each scene with the class, I found kids that really wanted to be part of the acting, some not so much and more music-leaning, and some who would be caught dead on stage in front of people. Because of this, it made it quite easy to cast. However, class teachers still wanted to give everyone a go in the spotlight. I had help from my mum and the teachers since they knew them a lot better than me and cast people best fit for the role. Bilbo had to be someone who was okay with being the main character and with the most lines. Thorin was a strong and serious character who needed an actor to lead the rest of the dwarves. With 11 other dwarves, there were a range of lines that were spread across the characters. This had its ups and downs, as some dwarves didn't have any lines and were okay with that, but some wanted a bigger part. This was fixed either in their second scene, when they changed around the roles, or with the addition of the narrator, who speaks at the beginning of some scenes to give context to the shortened version of the story. These are the recurring characters in the musical and the major roles. However, there are smaller roles in the single scenes, like the Goblin King, Elrond, and Gollum, who couldn't be played by anyone else but Harry. It is truly humbling hearing my own words echoed back to me by the students, especially when they point out my spelling mistakes with such confidence. In that moment, I realized what my parents and primary school teachers had to face over the years working with children, including myself. I can now understand their frustration that they must have experienced and have a deep sense of gratitude. So thank you, my mum, dad, and Lauren. At times these rehearsals were overwhelming and hard like any production, with kids constantly asking me, I don't know what part I am, after many go-throughs. Year 5 going away on their class trip in the middle of the term, finding more time to practice outside middle lesson by negotiating with class teachers, trying to translate the written directions onto the stage, finding out what works and what needs to be changed, whilst waiting for the Blues Brothers to complete their mission of God so I can get into the hall. And in addition, trying to get these kids to listen. No offense, but it's like herding cats, but like deaf cats who don't listen and answer until your third time you've called their name. I will be honest, I did cry at this point, but I had to overcome my fears to be a role model for my actors, as some of them had their own anxiety about the play. When starting doing the full dress rehearsals, the kids really started to grow into their characters and make them their own, with their own unique personalities. It felt like we had 6 different types of Bilbo or Thorin or Gandalf, one even with a concussion, don't ask. I started to see it coming together as everyone became more confident in their lines and being on stage, which I was proud of despite not knowing them very well, and had grown more confident myself around them. I know that sounds weird because I'm almost 18, but kids are very scary before they build a filter. I was able to communicate and connect with them, not just through my mum and dad, and they actually started listening to me. Before any performance, there has to be a lot of preparation behind the scenes to be ready for whatever happens on stage, good or bad. Now, as I mentioned before, the backstage changes between scenes were always going to be a nightmare. We had to prepare for the possible onslaught of children asking, "Where's my costume?" or "Who am I?" or "I've lost my script." Oh, that was me. I swear, the amount of times I lost my script, I needed to tie it around my neck. So, we organised a system in the old Eurythmy room. Step 1. The previous class on stage would come down to the room and be greeted by the next class waiting for them in the circle of chairs. Each character has their own chair with its designated child sitting in it. Step 2. The costume is exchanged. Step 3. The next actors go on stage and into their starting positions for the next scene. Any other single scene characters can be found on the costume rack with the character's name attached. Any further questions, direct the child to the chart direct the child to the chart of characters and kids playing them. Thank you for your cooperation. This was perfected, but there was still a problem with timing. At first, the change took a lot longer, so we added musical filler of an instrumental version of the song in the scene, while we waited for them to not make the silence even more awkward. But even then, it led to my parents playing the same song again and again and again, waiting for the actors. So we simplified the main Bilbo and dwarf costumes to their characters' distinct items and eliminating the time-consuming issue of button-up shirts. I was going to get rid of the belts, but there was an uproar from the dwarves as they really liked them and were very assuring that, yeah, they can do up a belt easily. To stop an actor's strike from happening, I complied. Now, I can't reassure you that this went as smoothly as planned, because as the director and percussionist, my place was on the stage to be ready to help and bang that drum. There was Jane, Melody, Tracy, Bess, Prue, Renee, Sass, Ciel, Melina, my nana, and Jara in the room to help the kids into their costumes. And the costume change would be successful, and they definitely sped up the process. On stage, I had the boys in my class, Jonas, Daniel, Kevin, and Adam, to be my backstage crew on either side of the wings. They helped me move the props under the cover of darkness, like the tables and chairs and the trees, and also not quite in the darkness, but having stage cameos, like the dragons on and off stage. Does that work? Oh, look how elvish we look. And also, Daniel, Jonas, and I's role as the dragon puppeteers and wing catchers. I really want to thank them as I kind of threw them into the deep end in the last week of rehearsals and taught them the quickest lesson in, here's that, be that, can you do that, move that, close the curtains. So I thank them so much for doing this last minute and doing such an amazing job. Well, there we were, on the 26th of September. And as I stood in the costume room with my young actors, I thought about myself when I was their age and how all I wanted to do was be in a school musical, and I couldn't wait until high school. I realized it was out of my hands now. It was up to them. I put the fate of my major works in the hands of children. What could go wrong? I gave my Marcus type speech, you got this, guys. You've been working so hard. 1, 2, 3, Bilbo. I didn't do that last bit. That's your signature move. I just went up to my spot behind the curtains and waited anxiously for the lights to dim. But just when you think it's not going to happen, Laurie and children always pull through in the end. And after 3 hours worth of performances, it was done. I could nitpick the performances forever, but I already think about that myself every night, so I'll save you the time. Overall, the musical was a success, with the only major train wrecks being forgotten lines or props on stage or the unavoidable silence when waiting for the next scene. Additionally, we were able to make a large profit from the tickets we sold on the first night at $10 per person. The night was sold out, and from the sales we were able to buy 4 new violins and some cello stands for the primary music department. I think I achieved all my goals I set at the beginning of my journey. By successfully putting on the first primary school musical, everything completed, ran as smoothly as I wanted, and yes, I did have some fun along the way. I do hope my young actors and musicians enjoyed their first musical. I must have done something good. They're still talking about it. I'm still getting waves and hugs, and Harry is still Gollum. If what I have done has encouraged 1 Year 6 to audition for next year's High School Musical, it would have all been worth it. On reflection, there are obviously things I could have done better, like my time management, and procrastination, like writing the script or making a prop, as every Year 12 every year will say. But I'm glad that I gave myself that early deadline performance, as it gave me a little bit more stress to actually get it done. If I could do it over, I wouldn't spend as much time on the script, as it took away from possible rehearsal time or the dragon puppet. Though it was a HSC project, I had more planned in the making of my MDP. But the pros of the project overshine the cons. I've learnt from this experience as a first-time director all the important parts that go into a production, how to work with people effectively and ask for support when I needed it, and good God did I need it. So thank you to my mum and dad, whose love, support and talent I could have done this whole bloody musical without. A big, big thank you to Jim. You were always there for me, whether I liked it or not, but your support was always appreciated. Thank you to the years 4, 5 and 6, and Prue, Bess and Tracy, to all the people helping backstage, including my class, who had their own projects to worry about. I owe you one. And thank you to the school, the teachers and the students and its whole community. Now I can go back to my hole in the ground for the holidays before I must go on my new journey off to uni for music performance next year. That's a future me problem. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Hannah. Yes, I kept on visualising all of those scenes of the kids on stage. It was truly amazing, those 2 performances, and thank you very much. And you do realise that you will be back to do Lord of the Rings 1, 2 and 3. You lined her up, haven't you, Marcus? Yeah, we look forward to that. Good projects for uni. We're going to have a half-hour break, and then we'll be back again. We'll reset the stage. So thank you.